Hey everyone, welcome back to the Amoretti Test Kitchen. I'm Kelly and today I have a delicious fall recipe to share with you. We're going to be making an apple cider donut bundt cake. To flavor this cake, we're going to be using our natural apple cider artisan flavoring as well as our go-to Madagascar bourbon vanilla extract. To get started with this recipe, you're going to want to use a hand mixer fitted with the whisk attachment. This is just gonna help kind of break everything down to a more even consistency, which is what we want in this cake. Going in the mixer first is gonna be 3/4 cup of butter. And this is just like softened butter, not melted, not cold. And we're gonna whip the butter up with 2/3 cup of cane sugar, as well as 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix this for about 3 minutes. You want the batter to be a light, kind of fluffy brown consistency. Let's get going. All right, so now we have the perfect texture and consistency we're going for. As you can tell, it's nice and light and whipped. So I'm just gonna scrape down the edges of the bowl before I put in some eggs and vanilla. So before I add the vanilla, I'm gonna go ahead and incorporate the eggs one at a time, just because we want this to mix evenly. Okay, egg number 2, going in and mix. So with this all mixed together now, I'm gonna go ahead and add in the last egg as well as the vanilla. We're gonna be using our vanilla Madagascar bourbon extract. It's the best addition to any recipe, and it just smells so good. Perfect. So we're just gonna do 2 teaspoons of this. And now for our final egg. So we'll mix this one last time and then we'll work on our dry ingredients. So let's go ahead and set this to the side for a second. You don't actually have to move it, but we're not going to do anything with it because we're going to work on our dry ingredients. In this bowl, I have 2 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And we're just gonna add all our spices, baking powder, baking soda, and salt to the mixture. So to start, I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and lastly, 1/4 teaspoon of ginger. So now we're just gonna whisk this together, make sure all our spices, our baking powder, baking soda, and our salt are all combined. So before we add our dry ingredients into our wet mixture, we also need 2 more really important flavorful ingredients, and that is apple cider and applesauce. So I have a cup of apple cider here and 2/3 cup of applesauce. We're gonna kind of alternate between adding each one in at a time. But first, before we do that, let's go ahead and add the applesauce into our apple cider and mix it up. So grab your whisk, just give it a little stir. So starting with our flour first, I'm just gonna kind of eyeball this. There's no exact measurements as to what needs to go in at what time. So just kind of go in thirds, kind of figure, okay, 1/3 of this, then 1/3 of that, and so on and so forth. So in goes the first third of this. So before I add my next third of ingredients, I'm actually going to put in our secret ingredient, which is our Amoretti apple cider artisan. You're probably wondering, why do I need to add this to my recipe if I already have apple cider and applesauce in it? My answer to that is that it tends to bake off. So this just kind of adds that extra punch of apple cider, so you get more of like the spice notes as well as like the fresh apple. And it really truly does smell like apple cider. This product is one of my favorites, and I'm sure I say that about everything I make, but it really just smells like fall in a bottle. In goes a tablespoon. And this is just the perfect amount to help us get that extra apple flavor we want, because we truly want this cake to taste like an apple cider donut that just came out of the oven. With the artisan in there, let's go ahead and add a little more flour. Just continuing with the same third measurement. Just eyeballing it. Oh, I can already smell the spices, and it just smells so good. This is one of my favorite cakes to make. And then we're gonna go in with another little third of the apple cider mix. Oh my gosh, you guys, it smells so good. I wish I could give you all the smell-o-vision through the screen, because it's incredible. So let's scrape down the bowl. Just get the rest of that flour in there before we add the last bit of it. All right, so back in with the last bit of flour. All right, pouring in the rest of our applesauce and apple cider. Okay, so now that we have our batter ready, we're gonna go ahead and prep our bundt pan. I always like to wait to do this until right before I put the cake in the oven, because depending on what kind of nonstick element you're going to use, it can sometimes drip and then it pools in the bottom of the pan, which you definitely don't want for this, because bundt cakes are especially difficult to take out of the pan. So we're going to go extra crazy hard today with some softened butter. I'm using this just with a pastry brush, and I'm gonna pretty much just paint the pan with this. If you're not using a bundt pan like this and you have a lot more ridges in it, it's actually going to be a lot harder to get your cake out of it because of all those ridges. So you really just wanna be very generous, especially in those cracks and also on the bottom of the pan. So let's take this little whisk attachment off. I'm gonna smack it just to get the rest of the stuff off. All right, so we have our mixture and bundt pan ready to go. So let's just go ahead and pour this in, and then we'll make it all even and pop it in the oven. I'm just gonna go around in a circle so it's evenly coated, or evenly spread. All right, so let's go ahead and twist it, kind of get it to be even. Once you've leveled the bundt cake, let's go ahead and pop it in the oven. We're gonna put it in the oven at 350 for about 55 to 60 minutes. But just keep an eye on it because all ovens run differently, so we'll be back. So our cake is out of the oven and cooled and ready for us to start the finishing step, which is the cinnamon sugar topping to make this apple cider donut cake an apple cider donut cake. So before you take your bundt cake out of the pan, I typically wait until it's like just slightly warm. I don't want it to be super hot or just kind of like warm, because then it has the tendency to maybe fall apart. So I like to wait until it's pretty much all cooled, so that way I can just flip it over rather than like flipping the whole stand. So this should slide out perfectly because we did all the right steps. Let's just go ahead actually and use the stand this way. And then, woo! Give it a good twist. Sometimes you might have to grab like a wooden spoon to kind of get the edges loose, but don't use any metal because that will scratch this and it'll get rid of that non-stick coating that you desperately need with these. Ah, perfect. So pretty. I'm so glad it worked the way it did. So in the beginning part of this recipe, when we got all the butter and ingredients ready, you probably cut off 1/4 of a stick of butter. Go ahead and take that 1/4, pop it in the microwave and melt it, because we're gonna use this with another pastry brush and just kind of coat the top of the cake so that our cinnamon sugar sticks. If your cake is crumbling a bit when you put this on like mine is, you can just kind of dab it on there. Just don't use a lot of butter at that point, so that way you don't have like pockets of melted butter. Now for the fun part, we're gonna take our cinnamon sugar topping and coat this cake very heavily because it may not completely stick once you've already got it on. The butter will make this sink in, so you just really, like I said, want to be heavy-handed. All right, so here is our finished product, our apple cider donut bundt cake. I am so ready to cut a piece of this cake and try it with you guys. I just know it's gonna be incredible. Okay, so I got my fork and my knife and my plate, and I'm ready to cut a slice of this delicious cake. Oh, this looks so good. I'm so excited to take a bite of this. I have nothing else to say except that I'm gonna take a bite of this right now. Here we go. Moment of truth. That's so good. It's like perfectly, like still a little bit warm. It's like the perfect mix of cinnamon and apple. And all the spices just really work well in this recipe because it's an apple cider donut, of course. You really get a ton of apple with the addition of our apple cider artisan. It just really adds that extra bit of sweetness and spice that you sometimes will lose when you bake with apple cider. It just, honestly, it elevates this so much more. It's so good. I know I've said it a million times, but it really does hit the spot for those fall cravings. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this recipe, please leave us a comment down below telling us how it went for you and what you love the most about this recipe. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss any more delicious recipes like this or any testimonials from our amazing customers. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms at Amoretti on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, and Twitter. See you guys next time. Bye.